amongst altar boys they've raped, closing the churches, locking you out. We real Catholics have had it with them. That's why nobody's donating anymore. Half the donations aren't half. They're hoping the new pope will somehow enliven the Americans to give a little bit more. That's why they chose him. Make no mistake about it. Steve Bannon predicted it 10 days in advance. Nobody else got it right. Steve Bannon predicted it 10 days in advance on one reason and one reason alone. They want money because they're going broke.
Conclave for the Pope was more rigged than the 2020 election. Now, why do I say, let me back it up with some facts. On Piers Morgan's show, 10 days before the conclave started, I called. I said, Prevost is the dark horse. He wasn't in any betting pool. If you look at Italian TV, nowhere. The reason is not only is he's only been a cardinal less than 2 years. He was the perfect acolyte for Bergoglio to continue his thing. The front page of the New York Times says that today, if you read the whole huge front page story. More importantly, because of our efforts and because the traditional church in America is on fire with vocations and young people and vibrancy and urgency, that we help cut off the money going to the Vatican. And so the Vatican, the Wall Street Journal had a huge article this week that showed the Vatican has tons of assets, but they're illiquid. They need the American cash. They would never put a traditional American in that role because they think the American church has too much power. Prevost, what is going to be the contact for the big American donors?
I know, there was a joke at the time.
Instead of just becoming more Catholic, making the Catholic Church more Catholic, attracting more people to the truth of the Catholic faith, the one and only truth, which resonates in our very souls, instead of doing that, no, they still attack orthodoxy.
His brother did say
you're not underestimating the reaction against Trump here and the influence of Pope Francis on having appointed 2/3, 3/4 of the cardinals, whatever.
That's true, but it is, and he worked in the dicastery for the archbishops. However, he was virtually totally unknown. The American cardinals came out today and said, you know, he's the least American of the cardinals, and we don't really know him. This was a true dark horse. And it only took 3 ballots, folks. It took 1 day. They had 1 vote late in the afternoon. Next day he came back. It is impossible. And the Daily Mail reports he talked to his brother the 2 days before the conclave, and they were talking about picking Leo. He wanted to pick Leo, but he thought it might be the 13th, and then they figured out it was the 14th. How would you talk to your brother about that? This was totally rigged by the Curia. We're going to have a schism in the church because the traditional Catholics are not going to go along with the continuation of Bergoglio.
Okay. So let's park the Pope.
You said you spoke to him right before conclave?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what that conversation was like.
Really? And then we talk about what's going on, and I said, well, do you have your red socks? That doesn't go over well all the time. And then just that kind of stuff, and I said, well, are you ready for this? I said, did you watch the movie Conclave so you know how to behave? And he had just finished watching the movie Conclave. So he knew how to behave. So it's that. But when I heard he was in a group of 3, then I thought, well, this could happen.
When did you hear that part, and when did you know that he was maybe one of the finalists?
Maybe like a day or 2 after the Pope died, and they were talking about who are the runner-ups and who's in line next to be Pope. And I think I might have heard something about that at that point. Then I spoke to him Tuesday before he went into the conclave, and he just kept saying, no, that's not true, that's not true. So he's pushing it away, hoping that it would go away. It didn't go away.
When you actually heard that it was your brother who was selected, where were you? Were you watching television? Were you on the phone?
I was.
In my opinion, and he may be different than I think, is you will see kind of a second Pope Francis. I think he'll kind of follow in Pope Francis's footsteps in terms of some of the policies and the way he conducts himself. I think that's why I'm saying he's going to follow in Pope Francis's footsteps, because he knows there are the downtrodden. He knows there are the poor. He knows there are the disenfranchised, the people who don't have a voice. And so I think he will be looking out for that, because that's where he spent so many years with those people who he worked with and knows what their needs may be, and maybe he can do something to help them.